Welcome all hunters, anglers, trappers, and shooters to the only fish and wildlife conservation podcast that goes behind the scenes of the business of conservation, the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Our podcast is hosted by John Gassett from the Wildlife Management Institute and Scott Lavin from Tyee Resources. John and Scott will talk with experts from all sectors of the conservation arena about their passion for conserving the great outdoors. So please welcome our host of the Connecting with Conservation podcast, John and Scott.
All right, welcome to Connecting with Conservation. I'm John Gassett with the Wildlife Management Institute, here with my co-host, Scott Lavin, a marketing specialist for the outdoor industry, and a very special guest today, Dave Chanda, who's the president and CEO of the Recreational Boating and Fishing Foundation. But prior to that, was a director for the state of New Jersey for a number of years, and we worked together in a lot of capacities there and continue to do that now. Dave, glad to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and what RBFF does? And I should preface that the real focus of this whole podcast is to talk about the American system of conservation funding, the North American model, and how all those pieces work together to do good things for conservation, for recruitment, retention, and really just to provide a healthy environment for all of us.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, the short of it is RBFF is a national nonprofit whose sole mission is to get more people out fishing and boating and advocate to make sure people understand the importance of conserving our aquatic resources. We run a national ad campaign. We work with our state and industry partners to help them with tools and techniques to get more people fishing and boating, and everything we do is supported by that really important sport fish restoration tax. That fund is critical to our efforts and State Fish and Wildlife Agency efforts in management of the aquatic resources.
Well, that's a good point. We've now got a companion piece on the hunting side, but for several years there we were rocking along, and the Recreational Boating and Fishing Foundation, was getting a chunk of sport fish dollars, and so y'all sort of got to jump on the hunting side because you had a few years in there before the Council to Advance Hunting and Shooting Sports was stood up.
Yeah. Well, we've been around for almost about 25 years now, and we were created because of back. We saw a great surge in fishing and boating through the 70s and 80s. But all of a sudden, when you hit the 90s, it started to decline in a way that got the attention of state fish and wildlife agencies. It got the attention of industry. So working with the Sport Fish and Boating Partnership Council, they said we need to fix this. We need to help advocate, get more people understanding the importance of aquatic conservation, getting out on the water, creating memories. They were able to change the funding model to put 2% of the sport fish restoration money into developing a national campaign, and we're the organization that was created to implement that.
Good deal. Well, I know in my conversations with the industry, it seems to me like that there's a fairly high comfort level on the fishing and boating side because they feel like they have a marketing branch, or a marketing entity out there that's looking out for them, trying to recruit them more customers and agencies more customers. And I have heard on the hunting side, of course, as the council has, stood up and matured though, but they felt that we were lacking that on the hunting side. So certainly glad that we're partnering with industry and pulling that money over to do the things we got to do to keep customers on the ground.
One of the things that you guys know, I'm new to the industry. I came from retail, so I sold small boats, kayaks, canoes, and I sold fishing equipment. And I hadn't heard of you guys. I wasn't aware of that. And then literally my first year in a state wildlife agency, I went to your national marketing workshop. And remember 12 years ago, state agencies, marketing wasn't in their vocabulary. And in many ways, it wasn't an eligible function for the PRDJ dollars. You could perform outreach. You couldn't market. And you gave us some of the first fundamental techniques in how to advertise our activity and what we do. And since you I knew you since you were in New Jersey, but since you've transitioned, you guys have absolutely upped your profile among the different segments of our community. And I think you have a much greater presence to both the retail industry. You always, the CEOs knew you, but I'm talking about the counter staff now, right? You've really done a great job of opening your, broadening your footprint. And you look at your social media today and the general citizens now, the customers are now understanding what RBFF is and the role. And it's been really some amazing work.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I mean, when you think about what we're trying to do, though, it's all about the partnerships. And I mean, we have great partnerships with states and industry, but to me, even to your point of the work that you were doing, that we helped you do as a state agency, if you look at what states were doing 10 years ago with outreach efforts and marketing compared to where you're at today, it is just absolutely incredible. The growth that we've seen, almost 80% of state agencies have somebody to help them on team with marketing, with the whole R3 recruitment, retention, reactivation work. The growth and commitment is just incredible. And the one thing I would point out is having come out of state government, to see that happen is just really rewarding, because what it means is there aren't any state agencies that are growing in size or budget. So that means they made a conscious shift of their efforts to include outreach and education, recognizing how important it was to the conservation efforts. I mean, every state's doing great work, but now we're doing a better job of making sure our citizens know about that work, know their role in it, and how they can contribute. So it's a great model we've developed here.
No, hats off. It used to be a public information department, right? And they reported on things, but they weren't proactive. They didn't try to get ahead of issues. They were very reactive and passive. And now there is a marketing work unit that is trying to, and the thing is they're still not going it alone. They still can collaborate off of your platform and grow. Entities like yours are essential to the conservation effort, in my opinion.
It's funny to watch the evolution of agencies, over the past 20 years, where, when we first decided and when we were all working in agencies then, that, we had to have marketing people, to dedicated to recruitment, retention, reactivation. But the initial move mostly was to take a biologist and repurpose them into a marketer. And I think we found that pretty much failed miserably.
Yes.
Marketers need to be outgoing and positive and excited and love to meet people, and biologists want to play in the woods or the water and be left alone.
Yep.
So there's this sort of this polarization of those two personalities. But, we've learned our lesson, and we've started hiring people that are, folks like Scott, who have more of a business background versus I know how to pull a deer jawbone, but I don't know how to do what he does. But, it's good to see that trend. And the other transition I think is significant over the past 20 years is, and this goes both ways, but in your case, you were a state director that had a long tenure there, and you had a lot of experience. And then when you came over, you brought that state perspective and solidified that in RBFF. And I'm doing the same thing with WMI. Although WMI's model is to hire state directors who are retired or are out of a job, so it's like that's our business model. But there are a lot of these nonprofits and a lot of folks that are going after those people, because you do have an experience that's kind of unique. And tell us a little bit about what you think you brought from New Jersey that's contributed to.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit unique, but I kind of feel like I've come full circle. My education and training is as a wildlife biologist, a fish and wildlife biologist. That's what I went to school for. But when I was in school, I always recognized that if we're not able to communicate to the public who we're managing the resource for, the hunters and the anglers, they kind of get conservation. They know the work we do for them. But the folks that don't have a great understanding of how this whole model works. So I literally minored in communications. And when I came out of college, all I wanted to do was run the communications arms of the State Fish and Wildlife Agency in New Jersey. And I did that for about 20 years. Right, but then when an opportunity comes to move up, become a deputy director and then ultimately the director, you're not going to pass on that opportunity, because you can affect change in such a big way, and bring that into your state to make sure that the professional fisheries manager works closely with a professional communicator instead of developing that outreach program that usually they go out there and say, well, you can't see this picture that has 13,000 numbers on it, but it's really important data. Well, a communicator can help them.
Can help to tell that story.
Can help them bring that down to what it really means, that, guess what? The shad's swimming up the river because of all of this research and work that we've done. So, I mean, literally, I started in communications, went to, running that whole agency for 11 years, which was absolutely wonderful. But when I had the opportunity to come back to a program like the Recreational Boating and Fishing Foundation, where you have the full resources to really develop something, because, even at the state level, as great as the work that you're all doing, your budget is still very small, and you've got to be very resourceful about how you get that work out there. So Having done that work at the state level really helps me in my job now, because when I'm trying to get these state leaders to do more work, I know what's on their plate. I know that the minute I'm talking about an important issue about reaching the public, the minute they walk out the door, they've got 12 other fires they're trying to put out. So you don't need to worry about it. You go put your fire out, but hire professionals like Scott, take advantage of your NGO partners, and you can really advance the work that you're doing, in terms of conservation and making sure, the public takes advantage of getting out there and enjoying the benefits of what we're providing with fish and wildlife recreation.
Right. And it's more than, you said, the public. And I like that concept, because it's really more than just anglers and boaters that are benefiting from what you do. It's the public. We help make sure there's clean water, clean air, clean environment. Healthy locally sourced protein, if that's what you're into. So there's a lot of benefits that the public gets, on the backs of the people who are the men and women who are paying the bills through excise tax, license sales, purchasing equipment, that sort of thing. Right. So,
yeah, and one of the things that we love with the work that we're doing is we help those professional managers, bring the speak down to a language that folks recognize. I think we've even changed the narrative. If you look at fish and wildlife regulations, or your digest, whatever the state might call them, 20 years ago there was one set of imagery, and now the states have embraced the fact that this country is a very diverse country. There are many people that want to get out there and enjoy it, but if you want to see them enjoying that resource, you need to use imagery that reflects them, so they can say, yeah, you know what? I could pick up a kayak and I can do that. I see that, or I can go fishing, or I can learn to, get involved in the shooting sports and go hunting. So, and it's been a great change to see.
A lot of our audience for this show are professionals in the industry, particularly in retail and so forth. And I think we're doing a much better job of bringing it down to all pay grades, right? And I want to auger in on this communications piece. I remember I was a young retail professional way too long ago, and we had I worked for a Fortune 500 company. I'm in the back room, and they're projecting. We had our internal TV show, and I'm watching the regional presidents talk about issues, and I said, holy cow, it's no longer good enough to be a good businessman. And these are in the days of Steve Jobs, right, where he was getting up on stage, and you can't lead change if you can't communicate. Everybody I hire now, they have to develop their public speaking persona, right? And it's hard. It was very hard for me. It took a long time. This is before TED Talks and everything. So I think that's really key. That it's amazing that I did not know that part of your background until just now. So I think that's really important. And I would urge anybody in the industry to make sure that they are able to get in front of a room and work a room. We've seen we're at the Western Association of Wildlife Agencies conference right now in beautiful Washington State. We've seen a lot of committees throughout the last couple days, a lot of really great leaders getting in front of those committees, driving partners in one direction, and you just can't do that in a paper, in my opinion.
Well, and your example, anybody can learn to do this. Anybody can learn to communicate. Now, we may not all be Steve Jobs, because he did keep people on the edge of on their seats. Simon Sinek, the same way. People want to. They're captivating. You don't have to work at that. It's nice if you can, but you don't have to work at that level. But just be competent. Be able to talk the talk. Cut the biology speak if you can do that. And yeah.
Yeah, and it's a skill that develops. It's a skill that can be learned. And oftentimes, especially with my team, I'm always, when you're out there are many times that you don't need to talk. What you need to do is listen. You need to hear what the other person needs from us, how we can help them, how we might help a state. So it's not me coming in saying, this is how Arizona needs to do it. We want to come in and say, how can we help you? How can we leverage what you're doing? How do we together? And that's been a theme of this whole conference we're at this week is together we're stronger. And, it's a model that I believe in strongly, and it's one that we do at RBFF. I'm pretty proud of the partnerships that we've developed, not just with our state partners, but with industry as well. There are many industries that, that we partner with on events. So.
And what we do is so complex. A lot of us are siloed. We only get to see a small piece. You absolutely have to have the business people, the marketers, the biologists. And all. I'm not a biologist, but I hang out with you guys. And 10 years later, I know 1/100th, but I realize the value of that science-based management model and that data and data leads change too. But you got to have that leader in front, being able to articulate what it means in everyday speak, not because you still lose me sometimes when I'll be having lunch. It gives me a headache.
I lose myself sometimes.
Yeah.
So.
But even to your point, though, that's exactly why when I was in college, I minored in communications, because I didn't want to be siloed in any one particular wildlife management project. And when I was involved in a communications arm of New Jersey and running it, I mean, one day I'm out, banding bald eagles that we're bringing back to New Jersey for the first time in, over 75 years. And the next day I'm out sinking a ship off the coast with our staff, building an artificial reef. And, then I'm out, taking photographs of a restoration project, bringing wild turkeys back to the state that had successfully restored them in the 80s. So I got to be involved in everything. I got to see the big picture for the agency, and that's what actually segued nicely for me to become a director of the agency, because I understood everything that was going on in the organization.
More than just the biological processes.
Correct,
That's a part of what an agency. And I think a lot of our listeners they think about an agency as being a bunch of biologists and officers. And what they don't realize, and we've gone through several of these things, that we have lawyers, we have marketers, we have outreach and communications people. There's all kinds of staff that really are behind the scenes making the wheels turn. And on top of that, a lot of people think, well, it's all self-contained. The agency does this or didn't do that. When in fact, we're hiring research firms like Southwick Associates or some of the others, or we're hiring outside legal representatives. Wherever we need those, we pull those partners in too. And I think that's important. And I want to go back to something you said earlier, because I think that's sort of a keystone of your business approach for RBFF, and that's that collaborative conservation approach. You don't go, there are organizations out there, and we've all dealt with them, where they want to come in and tell you how to fix it or tell you what to do. And y'all's approach is the opposite. You go in and ask, what can we do to help you? And that's refreshing for agencies, I know. Because it gets them what they need to do or what they feel like they need to do, but they have the expertise of your people to help them get there. So.
Yeah, it's a cornerstone of anything. I mean, there's so many ways that you can accomplish the goals that you're after. So, everything that we do is driven upon research. Then we pilot a program, we show it can be successful, and then we try and roll it out with a magnitude of scale. And probably the best example I could give would be those mobile first catch centers that you and I have talked about. We started this project 6-7 years ago, but this was driven by a little bit of research and indicating that the greatest portion of your audience is in an urban environment. Right, so you can't expect that if you've got a beautiful fish hatchery in Arizona that everybody's going to come see it or come get a program. You need the ability to go there. So that led to us developing these fully enclosed trailers, or 7x12 trailer. We wrap it, and we wrap it in a way that it draws a child, a young, 6 to 13-year-old is going to see it and get excited by it. So. The fish that are on it aren't real pictures of fish; they're graphics, and we have banners that go with it. We fill it up with fishing gear, and then we literally give them to our state partners that have the capacity to hit these urban areas, and they take it and run with it. I don't no longer own the trailer. Arizona's a part of the project. Washington, we're all over the country. We now have 30 trailers in 25 different states. We have 2 with the Fish and Wildlife Service, 1 with the Ike Foundation. And now all of a sudden you're starting to get to a magnitude of scale. And I'm not doing it, but Arizona's doing it. California's doing it. The state of Washington is doing it. And just in 2023 alone, the partnerships that this has created, through our state agencies, they hit something like 40,000 people in 400 plus programs. But what's really incredible to me is that the states are looking to partner with the local community, with the national parks, with the military institutions that are around. It's just so great to see those partnerships, because that helps that agency leverage, because they all have fixed resources too. So now you have a local park community that wants to do it. I remember when Arizona was first getting involved in the program, one of the thought processes was, well, we don't have a person to run the program, but what we're thinking of is we'll train the folks in Phoenix to do it through their park system, and if it's successful, we're going to move it to Tucson. And I laughed and I said, well, if you go that approach and it's successful in Phoenix, you come back to me. We'll put a trailer in Tucson. We're not going to move it.
To move it.
I do want to highlight something for those who still don't know everything about RBFF. Is those resources I mean, you've got to have the greatest job in the world because of your funding model. You're able to just give this stuff to people, and it's not willy-nilly. I mean, you have to show ability to deploy it effectively. But, and again, all these years I've been going to your marketing workshop, I've always been able to come home and deploy something I learned, or you gave me a program, or you advertised that we're going to have a social media campaign. All you have to do is raise your hand and you're in. I mean, it's amazing resources. And you're right, that mobile catch center, we've probably done more learn to fish events in the last year than we have in years. Now, obviously, COVID affected some of that. And since then, we have staffed a fishing position. It's absolutely amazing. But your research is sound, your process is sound. You devise excellent products, and you say, and you give the buffet. You don't force anything, to John's point, and then the industry or the partner organization gets to select the flavor that's already in their mission, right? That they already are pursuing, and have an added free resource that makes them just a little bit better or a little bit bigger scale. We talk about scale so much on this program. Little boys and girls turn 6 years old every single day, right? This is a job that's never going to be done. So really, it's incredible value to the industry.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you look at where we've come to with we always run a national ad campaign. A campaign usually has a shelf life of 3 or 4 years, and you come up with something new and innovative. Historically, because we're dealing with actors and music, when we develop these things, it's been proprietary. But I work closely with our ad agency, and I said, look, I need to get this out in manners that I can't possibly reach folks. And working with their lawyers, we made a determination that our state partners, are eligible to take that material and just push it out on their resources, which is going to be huge for me because, this most recent campaign, the Find Your Best Self on the Water, is trying to target women and girls and let them see how, empowering our research shows that women that fish have greater, patience, grit, determination, self-confidence. They feel healthier, which, really connects well, to get them out on the water. Well, now we've produced that 30-second campaign, but if Arizona wants to use it or your home state of Kentucky wants to use it, they can co-brand it with us and just push it out. But they don't have to. Or you can take a smaller 10-second clip of it. So it's great that we can produce it because think about what that allows 50 states out there. I've now done the research behind a successful campaign. We've tested it before it goes to market. We evaluate it after it goes to market. We're the ones that are putting several $100,000 into the research and the production, and now you can have it. So that puts you 10 steps ahead of the game on
and
trying
if you think there's not an economy of scale there, 50 states could have individually done all that stuff for the same, each one paying that price, or you do it all and pass it on to them free of charge. So, well, I want just one more point on mobile catch centers. That's one that really excites me because we've all been to numerous state fairs and county fairs and outdoor trade shows and outdoor expos and all this. And every time, whether it's one of your things or just something the fair brings, if there's a tank with fish in it and fishing rods around, I've never been to one of those where there weren't kids standing all the way around it with a fishing rod in their hand. It's the lowest hanging fruit we got. They're going to be there, give them the opportunity. They go ride whatever rides they want to do or go see whatever, but they'll stand there at that fish tank and fish as long as you let them. And that's, sometimes only one time is all it takes to strike that spark. So
yeah, and you're exactly right with that Catch Center program. I can't tell you the number of, I call them the boots on the grounds implementers for you that have reached back out to us and said these things are a game changer. I mean, the only thing we ask of the state is to do at least a minimum of 8 programs a year going into a city environment, hitting that underserved audience. Almost every state far exceeds that. But the rest of the time, where you take the trailer, how you use the trailer, we want it to amplify your programs and what you have out there. And it's a great model, and I'll be looking, to build it out. I'm adding about 5-6 trailers a year because that's all I have capacity for, but there are sponsors out there, and we're going to go start to find those sponsors to bring more money in because my ultimate goal is to see a minimum of 3 of those trailers in all 50 states.
And there's a great progression there too, because a lot of states are doing. In Kentucky we have it's called our FINS program, which fishing in neighborhoods, and I actually had a discussion with the service director about a hatchery, a tailwater hatchery for trout, because in Kentucky during the months when we're putting trout in our fins, which are urban lakes for kids to fish in where they do not have an opportunity anywhere else, is we're running 4 to 6 trout tank trucks a day for the entire season of doing nothing but hauling them into these urban lakes. There's a reason we're hauling those fish, because there's participants on the bank catching those fish. Right. And so if you catch one at the fair in a mobile catch center, and then next week you buy your rod and you go and there's a lake here in your neighborhood and you go catch a trout or two, and that repetition at some point, it's like you become an angler. And that's what we're after. So
yeah, I love those events. I remember back in New Jersey, we ran 2 fish hatcheries. One was a trout hatchery. One was a warm water facility that raised sunfish, bass, catfish, and we put them into all the local park ponds. Well, many, you think about all the civic organizations that have those urban fishing programs, right? So my team got involved in taking fish to put in those, to just supplement those urban ponds for folks to fish. But we were going in on a Friday, throwing the fish in the water for a derby that was going to take place on Saturday. And I went back to the hatchery manager and I said, this is a great program, but we can do better. And he said, you're right. He said, how about if he said, it won't be paid overtime, but if we can compensate a day off, how about if I send my team in on Saturday, we roll up to the pond, have the families help us stock the ponds, and we'll do a little fishing clinic with them. Oh, my, how successful that program was then. We couldn't raise enough fish to keep up with it.
The hunting equivalent of putting a bear cub in someone's hands. It's like, let them see the fish come out of the stock truck into the water, and they just go crazy about it. So
you guys are hitting on a couple things. You talked about there's never a fish tank without people surrounding them. I mean, wildlife has an inherent hypnotizing effect. Everybody, even people who will never hunt and fish, stop their day when
and watch the fish,
or when a hawk lands, right, on a fence post when they're getting in their car or whatever. I mean, just wildlife stops traffic, literally sometimes, right? And then the other piece is, and I think we talk about scale so much on this program. You said this is a magnitude of scale. Those are my favorite words. And we talk. Our 3 back in the day was we set up an event, come to us, right? And we had some success, and we changed some lives that way. But the value of going to people where they are, being, and again, what we do, the adoption sequence of becoming a standalone, continuation without support angler or hunter or recreational shooter is very, very long, and you have to be dedicated to that. So to be able to be an impulse while somebody's already in their day, they might not have been thinking of coming to this event, but they see the trailer, and the trailer is at least the one in Arizona looks amazing. I could be prejudiced, but and it does. It absolutely draws people. And then you've got these great, we plussed it up with these standalone fishing racks, so it looks like we're organized and ready for business. They're not piled up leaning against the trailer. You come up, there's fishing rods lined up. There's people in logo wear. Hey, welcome. Come on, what do you want to go fish? Let's teach you, and it absolutely works. And so your scalability is up. You have unintentional customers now, right? These were not your planned attendees, and it removes a lot of barriers.
Yeah, I mean, it marries up perfectly. One of the things you both just said is, wildlife is just an inherent magnet. It draws people in, and I think that presents an opportunity to any state agency to leverage that desire to be near or see and enjoy that wildlife, and put something in their hands that they can then participate with it. And I've always looked at that in my career as how do we leverage somebody's inherent interest in the fish and wildlife that we're managing to help them learn more about it, even if they're not going to participate, just to be aware of it. So, and those trailers just fit that bill tremendously for what.
That's amazing. I want to touch on, but we hear a lot about inflation these days, right? And I know that it affects fish stocking because I never thought I'd be so intimate with this knowledge, but right now I'm paying $7 a pound to have fish stocked in my state. So that's an expensive fish to stock, right? Boating is an investment, right? That's a lifestyle, and we've talked a little bit about, you and I at least have about some declines in boating. I'm an aspiring boater as I plan the next stage of my life. What are you guys seeing in that, and what is that looking like?
Well, yeah, I mean, inflation is always a challenge for everybody, but and it gets tough. But when you're looking at something like the sport of fishing, you don't need to go out and buy a $500 rod and reel outfit to be successful at fishing. So it's a sport that, compared to other activities, has a fairly low entry point. Now, you can't say the same for boating, although it depends upon what kind of boating you want to do. I mean, I have 3 kayaks. I don't have a ton of money invested in those kayaks, but I certainly don't have that, that big Boston whaler out in the backyard just yet, but maybe I'll get there. But I think even further to your point, when you're connecting these activities to, not only just recreation, but family fun and memories of a lifetime. I mean, let's face it, and I've said this, we have an alliance with Disney where we're on all of their streaming channels, but we have in-park fishing opportunities. And I always joke with them about you can go to Walt Disney World, you can take your kids out there and have a blast. This is down in Orlando, it's not in Disneyland. And then you can take a 2-hour fishing trip on a pontoon boat, guarantee you're going to catch a nice bass. And the thing I joke with our Disney folks, I said, I can promise you that when that mom and dad leave the boat, they're going to remember that fishing trip. They're not going to remember that Coca-Cola that they were drinking that day, but they're going to remember the fishing trip.
That's, this is a big thing in R3 and having parents involved. And you're absolutely right. When the parent sees that light bulb, they have to be there in that activity. You can't just, have the kids come to the activity, because I ran a lot of outdoor stores. I never once had a 12-year-old come to my store and make a purchase, right? You need mom and dad involved in the journey with the kid. And I'll bet you're absolutely right on that. I didn't experience that at Disney World, but I was there a long time ago. So
it's not that expensive. I mean, compared to the parks, it's a good day of recreation. It's a good break if you have young kids. Disney's just a fantastic partner. I mean, nobody does storytelling like Disney, and there's so much that we have in the fish and wildlife community that with the story to be told. So I'm pretty proud of the partnership we have right now with them. It opens up a lot of platforms for us to get the word out.
I remember when you all announced that, and you announced it at one of the marketing workshops. That was pretty out of the box. That was unconventional. How did that start?
Well, one of our board members, and we have a fairly large board that my board members are placed by the constituents, the American Sport Fishing Association, state agencies, the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies that represents you, National Marine Manufacturers. So, I have a broad base of industry and state representatives, and one of our board members, who was a very successful businessman, brokered the connection and the introduction to Disney, and it's really kind of interesting, because sometimes if it's not going real well, he'll send a note to Bob Iger and say, hey, we need to step this up a little bit. So it sometimes helps to have connections.
Do you even have his cell phone number?
I don't.
It's good to have board members to do, though.
Yes, that's true.
So, one of the things from put my agency hat back on that I always thought that about fishing and angler recruitment is it really is sort of the gateway drug for being a practicing conservationist, utilizing the resources, because number one, you can get somebody started immediately. And we talked about recruitment tools and marketing tools earlier, but it's like when I started in the 90s with an agency, our recruitment tool was hunter education, boater safety, and maybe bow hunter education. And all those are great programs. They do great things, and it's necessary. We need to make sure people are safe and all that. But they don't do much of teaching you about how to do something. It's more about how not to harm yourself while you're doing that. And so those are all regulatory requirements. To in most places, to be a fisherman or an angler, the only regulatory requirement you have is to buy the license if you're not license exempt. So number one, you can put them out there quickly, and number two is I could send an officer out with 100 kids and a rack of rods, and he could help all those kids. You can't do that on the hunting side. Hunting is a very personal one-on-one experience usually, or one-on-two experience, and so it's a force multiplier. And I think that when people take up angling, which is I think less of a lift than all the way to purchasing a firearm, shooting an animal, that next jump is a lot easier once they've done this, because they've already become a consumer. So
Yeah, and I mean, this would even go back to the point fishing absolutely is a much easier entry point. You'd almost equate boating a little bit. If you're going to, be a boater with with an engine on it, it might be a little bit more like hunting because now it's a financial commitment. But again, it's a lifestyle. It's creating those whole family memories. I think what we've seen with all of our partners, and again, going back to those mobile catch centers, with fishing, there's not the same affinity to continue the sport as there is with hunting. So I think it's really important with our state partners that anybody they're introducing to fishing, we need to grab them and collect them into our database because you need to send and connect to them. Here's another local fishing location. Here's what's happening now in your area where you can be successful. Because if we don't continue to help them succeed, there's plenty of other things that'll grab their attention. And that's what has taken our state partners a while to grab onto. 40 years ago, the only recreation in town was hunting and fishing.
Yeah.
And now mom and
dad.
we
didn't have to hunt for customers.
Right. And
they were there.
Yeah. I mean, mom and dad have so many other activities. There's soccer, there's baseball, there's this, there's that. Throughout my entire career in the State Fish and Wildlife Agency, all the seminars that I ever gave, the one thing I pointed out to everybody, as it relates to hunting and fishing compared to sports, all three of my children were athletes in high school. One of them got to win a state football championship playing in the Giant Stadium in the Meadowlands. I mean, how cool is that, right? But what I point out to people, I loved everything my kids did in sports, baseball, football, track, whatever it was. I would go to those events, but I was a spectator. I watched them, right? When we go hunting and fishing together, we are participants together. We make decisions together. My oldest son's 35. We just went on a turkey hunt together, and we made all the right decisions that day, but we did it together. And even though they have tremendous memories from childhood for sports, if you get around a table and you start kibitzing, those kids talk more about the time of field, fishing, hunting, boating, camping, outdoor, with family, and it might be something as silly as, remember the time Dad went running down there and he fell in the mud puddle? But they don't talk about some accomplishment they made in high school, at an event.
Or what happened at their tennis practice or what, it's like, and, that's a good point. I made the comment the other day, and I can't say it's universal, but, to me, sort of organized sports, team sports, travel ball, all that stuff, it's all great. And I know kids love that and they participate in it. But it is, the parent is at best, unless it happens to be the one that's the coach, is the spectator. And in a lot of cases, it's a place for the parents to drop their kids off for a few hours while they go get some alone time, which is also necessary. But there's no replacement for spending time in the woods or on the water with your kids. And it's, so it's, do you need time away from your kids, or do you really want to spend some quality time with your kids? So here's these two activities you can do. This one gets you away from them. This one gets you connected with them, where all the distractions are gone. And I think we tend to miss that a lot of times.
We do. And that's that new animation that we just released, the second catch. So, I mean, we have 3 versions of it, but that 90-second version, of that father-daughter interaction over fishing, drifting apart, coming back together, it captures all of that, just in a little 90-second animation, how important it is for that family time. And there's no time like now. I mean, you blink and
they're gone. They're grown, and they're doing their own thing.
I want to call out a few things to our industry viewers that you both hit on. You talked about the lack of initial affinity and the need to build that up, right? If you're doing recruitment, retention, reactivation, R3 events where you're trying to put people in water, you have got to give them a next step. They had fun with you today. Give them a place to go or a destination to follow up in the following weekends or months or whatever. And if you're in sales, John said that these events teach you how to do it safely, maybe. They teach you some fundamental skills. They don't teach you where to go, though. So make sure if you're selling this product, you're trying to get people out on the water, you're showing them in your zip code where they can go within, preferably within an hour's drive. That's a reasonable tolerance for within one day. If you're going on an overnight trip, you're going to drive a little farther, right? But you've got to show the public where to go, because unless you're doing it, you don't know, unless you happen to have a lake in your backyard, right? So.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And more importantly, it's an excellent point to bring more customers into your shop because they need that help. They need to be pointed in the right direction. They need to know that, well, Lake so-and-so is not getting them today, but boy, 15 miles away on this one using this bait, you can do it. That information is so powerful to bring a customer in. And you're even seeing to the boating industry now, one of the things that they're doing more of is used to be you just bought that boat, here's the keys, off you go. You have no idea how to trailer it down to the water. You have no idea how to dock it. I mean, for the inexperienced, for it's a first-time boat owner, and a lot of the boat retailers are now putting more time into not just handing over the keys, not just walking you through, here's what this boat can do, but putting events on the water to help you learn how to trailer it if you're going to be docked all year, how to get in and out of the dock without cracking your boat up. And they need that, and they relish it, and that's the dealer they're going to go back to versus somebody that just sold them a product and said, learn on your own.
They've taken the relationship from transactional to actually educational. It's a full package. So, yeah.
And I've been talking to you about boats for a couple of years now. We're looking at pretty hard these days. Some of those manufacturers you're referring to literally have like meetups, and they're building their social interaction and their networks so that everybody who has this boat, hey, we're going to be at this inlet at this time, and I haven't gone yet, but on YouTube it looks like they're getting huge attendance, and community is what drives outdoor recreation, in my opinion. Fishing can be very solitary, but the 21st century customer seems to be much more about community, and they like to, I don't want to go alone. I want, John and Dave to be going. Okay, they're going, I'm going. So,
and that's probably one of the biggest challenges I have running a national campaign, because especially fishing and boating probably as well, you're really talking about something that occurs locally. I mean, the avids are going to travel, but we have 57.7 million anglers in this country. Most of them are fishing locally. So how do I take a national campaign and then drive it down locally? And it's things that we're looking at. How do you create that sense of community that you just mentioned? And a lot of it's going to go through our state partners, the industry partners that we have. There's organizations out there like the Marine Retailers Association. They do workshops for their retailers, not only to help them become better businesses as it relates to boating and boat sales, but better customer relations, and how do you keep that customer, and what do they need from you? Going back, that community is everything, and that's what people are looking for.
Getting back to a comment I thought I had on the churn issue, which is the fishing every other year, every third year, and a lot of that is not because they're not passionate about it, they're not interested in it. It's that they get busy and they do other things they don't remember. So we're sitting there looking at the Columbia River outside, and it's full of walleye and sturgeon and all that, and a bunch of wildlife and fish professionals in this building, and I don't see a lot of them fishing over there, but I bet you if somebody had announced at the meeting that the walleye bite was on fire and you could catch a limit in an hour if you just go, we would be going to the nearest town, buying rods and reels, and we'd line the banks up over there, because all it takes is reminding people, hey, the fish are biting, let's get on the water. And I've had seasons where I went through, and it's like, man, I hadn't fished in 8 months, and it wasn't because I didn't want to. I get busy doing other things. But if you told me, if my former fish chief and deputy had said, man, the bass are tearing it up in your lake right now, the crappie are tearing it up, stop and get me on the way by.
Yeah,
we're
right.
going. But if I don't hear that, it's like, even though I could walk to the lake, I don't think to grab my stuff and go down there, because it's just it's what's recent in your mind. So
you're right. Well, but we ought to look out the window, because I do have 2 staff members that are out on the water
for
today.
sturgeon.
Yeah, and they're working. They're with a couple of our constituents, industry folks, and so it's both recreation and business. It's kind of like a lawyer on the golf course right now.
We're pretty blessed.
Aren't we?
John and I were picked up at the airport by one of our colleagues with a boat on the back of a truck. I've never been picked up at the airport with somebody towing a boat before, so that was a great start of the week. And that's why marketing is so important, though, you're talking about, and you said life's just passing us by, right? We need to remind people, all right, because we all get kind of bogged down, I got to go get groceries, we got to pick up the kids from school. We have to highlight those opportunities, right?
But I'd almost bet you, though, that when we do that and somebody says, all right, I'm going fishing this afternoon, I'm blowing off work, or I'm not going to do the chores, they probably didn't get to the lake and an hour later say, man, I wished I hadn't done this. That was never said. It's like once you're there, it's like, all right, this is what I want to be doing. That's the stuff I maybe should be doing, but that's what I want to be doing.
And I'll bet, Dave, some of your family's best stories are about the ones that got away.
Oh,
when you weren't
goodness,
successful, right? It's not. You don't need success to have that memory, to have that fun, right? I mean, it's the journey, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely right. Going back to your point about people, life gets in the way or things. We just completed a study on churn. Why do people, fish one year but not the next? Because a lot of people, life did get in the way. But we were trying to get down even deeper into, okay, well, you didn't go fishing this year. So what did you do with that time? Why did you not go fishing? I don't have enough time. That's just as an excuse, because you're going to find time for the things that are really important to you. And two of their activities that they were doing instead of fishing or boating were they enjoyed reading a book and they got involved in cooking. And let's think about what you can do on a boat. You can easily, sit streamside or on a boat and you can read a book, and you could get out there camping, fishing, and boating and really cook up a pretty good dish. So
we've cooked on our boat before.
Right? I mean, just knowing that helps all of our partners know what kind of messaging you need to get to somebody. Say, hey, picture yourself sitting out there on that boat reading that book while the waves are rocking.
I'm amazed that it wasn't children, right? Or work related. I mean, they actually literally just made an active choice to do something else. I would have thought it would have been much more life-consuming pursuits, right?
I love the time argument too, because people say, I just don't have the time. And my response is, you have exactly the same amount of time as everybody else, not 1 second more or less. And other people are doing it. So if you got the same time that they got, it's just what you make your priorities. Is your priority your mental health and enjoying the outdoors and being healthy? Is your priority slaving away behind a desk? At some point you got to break loose and go get a reset. So
right, but that's why it's so important that you always have to, when you're running some of these programs, you need to have really some good sound information on, well, what are people doing with their spare time and how does that fit in, and do they even realize when people think about any of our sports, the outdoor activities, boating they probably get this, but fishing and hunting, they don't realize how social those activities really are. I mean, fishing is such a social sport. Yes, there's a percentage, probably 20% of people like to fish by themselves, but that's not the case with, women and girls. They want to be in a group. I love all of these outdoor sports, but I thoroughly enjoy them more when I spend it with a friend or one of my family members.
And the one that I know you didn't leave it out intentionally, but recreational shooting, go to a sporting clays range or a trap range or a skeet range. It's like they're a blast. They're social. You get to go with your buds and you improve your marksmanship. Yeah, and they're just a good time.
That's an awesome point.
Yeah. And it's like, that people think they think they're one thing, and it's actually, a social event where you're doing a little shooting.
Yep.
So
that's a great example. I mean, every year for the past 5, my wife and I go out to western Pennsylvania. We rent this lodge, a cabin back in the woods right along a trout stream. But it's at a shooting preserve, and they have a rifle range, they have a pistol range, they have sporting clays, and my kids are all grown, but they'll come up and join us. It has like 4 bedrooms, and we'll have a weekend at the campfire, out at the fire pit. But the sporting clays is the one they love the most, because we can walk the different stations and kibitz and have fun while we're doing the shooting.
I call it wildlife golf.
Yeah.
I'm having some major coincidence anxiety here, because we just found out last year at the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, the Fish and Wildlife National Survey, a disproportionate number of recreational shooters are anglers. And so I'm just thinking, now you guys just made that adjacency as part of a random conversation. That's making my head scratch right now.
We're making Scott think. That's always a scary proposition.
It hurts a lot.
Well, Dave, we're getting towards the end of our time here, but just real quickly, you talk to us about a couple other initiatives you got with RBFF. I know you got an initiative that's geared towards Hispanic anglers and a couple others too. So just what are your big ticket items you got coming?
Well, some of the things we're really excited about is the campaign that we're doing right now to try and get more women and girls out fishing. I mean, if we can even get it to a 50-50 male-female participation rate, you just grew fishing by 26%. We work very closely with our state partners on the George H.W. Vamos Pescar fishing program, which connects our state partners into the Hispanic community to teach fishing. The research that we're just doing now on, why did people drop out of fishing? I know it's going to be very beneficial to our state partners, but we feel that what we're learning out of it, and the research is just finally completed, is we're gonna focus heavily on our retail partners, much the way the marine retailers, for boating, MRAA does that work with boating. We see an opportunity on the retailer side to help them do a better job with their customers. And I know they're not going to recognize or care about the R3 word, but they will care about wallet share and what it takes to get that customer coming back. And it might be something as simple as, here's where you can go to catch a fish or not. We actually hired new staff to drive that program with our retailers, and we'll get some industry partners out there. I always enjoy it when we hire a new person, especially if they came out of the state world, who were familiar with our programs. We're only about 17 employees strong, and when we say, "What's your biggest surprise?" they'll say, "I had no idea how much RBFF is involved in." I was very familiar on the state side. I had no clue on industry, with the nonprofit sector, all the reach that you have. But it comes back to, that wasn't his world. It's to see that. But it just like I need the state partners, I need the same out of our industry partners. And we're constantly building those partnerships. So everything that we do, you say, what's the next big initiative? It's all about getting more people out there, enjoying fishing and boating, creating those family memories, recognizing that the management of those resources, the clean water, clean air, it's all tied right back to your own quality of life and health issues. So it's way bigger than just fishing.
Well, I really appreciate you being on the show telling this story, because one of the things I hope that come out of the show is the general public realizing how many faceless people and organizations are ensuring that they have an opportunity to recreate in so many different ways that they're probably not thinking. I know I didn't think about, right? And you guys have moved the needle. You guys support an entire nation's worth of state wildlife agencies and recreationalists. So your data and your infographics have made me look smart in my community engagement efforts. I do a lot of industry relations, and a state agency doesn't usually have the resources. If they do research, it's just among their known customers, and it's usually not cross demographics. It certainly isn't regional, and that data helps inspire collaboration.
Well, and I can't let us go without thanking you for what you do, and especially things like your and I'm gonna give you an example, a personal example with me, but your Hispanic outreach program, because we tried that back in the day in Kentucky, and it was a classic example of biologists putting together a marketing campaign. Okay, we knew we had Hispanic migrant workers who fished and fairly avid anglers. They weren't purchasing licenses. In many cases, they weren't purchasing equipment. I mean, you want to see something impressive, they'll take a piece of fishing line and a pop can and a hook and a split shot, and they can cast it further than you can with your best rod. I mean, they're really good at it. But when we ask them, and I had the officers ask them, and they're willing to buy a license, they didn't know how, or maybe they couldn't read and understand English very well, so they couldn't even look at a reg book and understand what they had to do. So, in a brilliant move and I take full responsibility on my part, we published a one-page advertisement in the Hispanic Yellow Pages in our big cities and the areas where these folks live. And it explained to them, hey, here's what you got to have. Here's how you do it. If you need any help, here's the department number. And we published it in the Hispanic Yellow Pages, not having one Spanish-speaking person on staff. So our phone starts ringing. I had to hire someone very quickly just to handle the phone. So once again, biologists trying to round peg in a square hole. We're going to try to fix this and make it work. Where y'all are much more researched and nuanced, and you know what you're doing before you ever take that step. So we appreciate that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and again, that George H.W. Vamos a Pescar program is a classic example of a great partnership with states, industry, and RBFF. We run the program. It's a 50-50 match. Most of our money to run the program has actually come from a generous donation from Johnny Morris, the owner of Bass Pro Shops, being behind it. We just topped $1 million. That means states put $500,000 into it. We put $500,000 into it. And we're in probably 18 different states that are running these programs and hitting the local community. And what, to me, that's exactly what state agencies, those kind of relationships built at the local level, in the community. It's so critical to the success of the organization, because it does then come back to help them understand, I didn't know I needed to buy a license, or even how that money is being spent.
Right.
Because they're all going to support it when they know it goes to,
getting them more fish,
bettering,
better conditions, more access, all the stuff that it does. So, well, Dave, thanks for being on.
No, my pleasure. It's fun.
It's been keep up the good. You're doing the Lord's work, so keep it up, folks. If you have any idea you want to try fishing, just take the jump. Take your kids out. It's easy to start. Easy to do. Go to Dave's website, RBFF's website. They got tools on there to kind of tell you how to get started. So you won't regret it.
Thanks. So easy site to remember. TakeMeFishing.org.
There you go. Well, thanks for listening. We'll be back with you next week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Please do us a favor and tell your buddies, friends, family, and others about what you've learned here today. If you like what you heard, come on back anytime and listen to another episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast.